News came out this week that Donald Trump is planning on suing the BBC for $1 billion for making it look like, with false editing, he was inciting violence on January 6th. I know it was years ago, but it matters today because to this very moment, virtually every legacy media outlet is continuing to stir up actual violence and make you look like the bad guy. Why you do not hate the mainstream media enough today on the Isabel Brown Show. News around the block here in Washington, D.C. is that the president of the United States, Donald Trump, is mulling over his options to sue the BBC. This is a fascinating development, although not unsurprising or unshocking to those of us who have been paying attention to just how far the media will go to lie about you, to smear your character, and to completely invert reality to fit their political agenda, which, shocking, is always on one side of the political aisle. The Guardian reported this morning that Donald Trump has threatened new legal action against the British Broadcasting Corporation and has welcomed the resignation of two of its most senior figures, some of the most senior people who work at the company, after a campaign against this company that reached all kinds of international coverage because they had a documentary program air last year in 2024 that misleadingly edited Donald Trump's speech on January 6th, 2021. God, that day was a wild ride. I was live streaming with Charlie that morning on the Charlie Kirk show for hours and hours and hours. I will never forget how insane that was. But what was really more insane as to what happened on January the 6th was how the media portrayed everything that happened that day after the fact. Just one example of this is how the BBC misleadingly took different parts of a speech made by President Trump that day, his outgoing speech leaving office, and smushed it all together to fit the narrative that he was inciting violence on the United States Capitol, which you might be saying to yourself, dude, this was like 4 years ago. Why do we even care about this anymore at this point? This matters, as you will see in our episode today, because the BBC's misleading editing here is just one of literally infinity examples of how the media still to this day is hell-bent on dividing our society and doing everything they can to manipulate objective truth, which is why, frankly, you need to turn it off and you need to listen to new media in whatever way you possibly can. Lawyers who are working for the president say that their specific ask here in this potential lawsuit is for the BBC to retract this Panorama documentary, Panorama being the company that edited the documentary, by this Friday, so clock is a-ticking, or face a lawsuit from President Trump for no less than, get this, $1 billion, which I think is awesome. Billions and billions of dollars. According to most of the U.S. media outlets who are covering all of this, the BBC did say today that they have received the letter and they will respond in due course, whatever that means. So you may be asking yourself, okay, $1 billion though, how bad could it really be? Here is exactly what they did to misleadingly edit President Trump's speech on January 6th, a couple of years ago.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
So obviously 2 clips that couldn't possibly be more different. You had the ominous, haunting, creepy music in the background, no applause from any of the people gathered there to hear from the president. So it automatically has this like dark, sinister vibe behind it. But as you saw, they took a sentence that President Trump said in his outgoing speech as president of the United States, and then they skipped ahead 54 minutes. An entire hour later, when clearly he's talking about something completely different, into the same sentence and made it look quite seamless. There didn't even look like there was a jump cut there, which is the really creepy part. of all of this and makes you very afraid for the future of AI editing, where we won't ever be able to tell what was actually said by real people, but obviously was said in an attempt to make the president look like he was inciting violence and trying to stir up a violent insurrection against the United States of America. We all know that this has happened now, but of course, no one in the mainstream media is really talking about this. They're just providing more negative coverage of President Trump in inviting the idea of this lawsuit into the public conversation because he is just really upset. He's actually a fascist. He really wants to shut down real journalism and freedom of expression. In fact, today, the outgoing director general of the BBC literally told the journalists who work for the BBC to, and I quote, fight for our journalism in response to the threat of a lawsuit from President Trump. So let me just say this as we start this important conversation about how truly twisted and evil the mainstream media actually is in our society. I am so sick and tired of the media acting like this supposedly fascist regime, which is a word they like to use all the time, makes you wonder why, of Donald Trump is a threat to legitimate journalism. The mainstream media is the entity that has been spreading actual misinformation and propaganda in the first place. The mainstream media is the entity that continues to call Donald Trump, Charlie Kirk, or anyone who supports them a violent fascist, a white supremacist, literally Hitler youth. For what means to an end? I don't know. What is the end that they're trying to achieve? I think it's a valid question for us to be asking. If you can selectively edit President Trump to look like he's inciting violence, then what does it say about you, entire umbrella of mainstream media, that you continue to highlight stories calling these people violent fascists or Nazis or white supremacists or akin to the KKK? Again, none of this is new behavior, so I thought it would be prudent today to take a little walk down memory lane on the Isabel Brown Show, not to focus on the past, but to recenter ourselves on the present right now, to remind ourselves of just a few of the most egregious examples in the past few years alone, to recenter ourselves on a fundamental truth. You do not hate the mainstream media enough. Back to the importance of fake news and debunking it here in a second. But just as much as these guys hate fake news, they love real food. And we are so grateful to our friends over at Good Ranchers. I, as you guys know, am a diehard Good Ranchers subscriber, and Good Ranchers is essential in our family routine. They have 100% American meat from local farms and ranches across the country delivered straight to your door. As a Good Ranchers subscriber, you get $25 off and free shipping on every order, plus a free gift for life. I'll tell you what, the few times that we haven't had Good Ranchers stocked in our freezer and we've had to go to the grocery store and buy meat there and work on a beautiful family steak dinner or short ribs or whatever we want to make this time of year, I can taste the difference, and it is not a good difference. We are so grateful for Good Ranchers' highest quality, providing a safe family dinner around our family dinner table and just letting our family reconnect over a beautiful meal that is rooted in American agriculture. It has been a powerful way for us to spend time together, especially around the holidays. And I know that that is important to you guys too. Here's the deal. And what I want you to remember today, all new subscribers to any Good Ranchers box, any of them, using code Isabel will get an additional $100 off your first 3 orders. $40 off your first order, $30 off your second, $30 off your third, and get this, free meat for life when you subscribe. So hit up goodranchers.com this holiday season, full of delicious meals and options for your family. Again, use code Isabel on their website, goodranchers.com. Let's all get back to the table. Let's just start with this from the BBC just last week. You guys know I was on CNN for my CNN debut last week and made quite a splash when I said that President Trump does indeed deserve the FIFA Peace Prize medal. Anxious to see how that all unravels. Because of his continued advocacy for Christians who are being slaughtered in Nigeria, of course, then CNN tried to turn that into a commentary about interfaith slaughtering from who? Oh, still Islamic extremists. Yeah, whole separate conversation for us to go down that rabbit hole another time. But in the wake of President Trump making his announcement that day that I announced that on CNN, that he would be taking action against the country of Nigeria to label them a country of particular concern based on the Islamic violence that was being enacted against 50,000 Christians in the country in the last 15 years, here's what the BBC had to say about this. The BBC put out this headline related to President Trump's advocacy of protecting Christians around the world. Are Christians being persecuted in Nigeria as Trump claims? ? And underneath that, you see this byline. Donald Trump says Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria. Is he right? ? I mean, for God's sake, really? Really? Is he right? Donald Trump claims. BBC, you have a bigger problem than just this one particular documentary, but that's obvious to those of us who have been paying attention. I don't know. Where did the media really start to go wrong in the last few years? Let's take things back to COVID, for example. You guys may remember CNN, who we were just speaking about, selectively editing Joe Rogan to make him look sick when he was talking about the fact that he felt uncomfortable taking the COVID vaccine. Remember this?
And turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything.
Guys, this is so bad. Like, that is so pathetically bad. The editing on that is insane. But CNN wasn't alone in specifically trying to twist the narrative and manipulate objective reality and facts related to COVID over the past few years. As soon as it started to become pretty darn obvious that COVID probably did come from a laboratory in Wuhan, China, the China virus, as Donald Trump was calling it at that time. But if you suggested that, you were a xenophobe. You were a white supremacist, and your existence would be wiped off the face of the internet. As this started to become way more obvious that this conspiracy theory was actually true just 6 or 9 or 12 months later than the media wanted to admit it, the New York Times put out this headline related to the origins of COVID. Why does it matter whether COVID came out of a lab? Are you serious? Goodness gracious. But the truth is, they don't just do this for pandemics. They do this for every type of conversation and story under the sun. And again, we're talking about stuff that is retroactive. This did happen in the past, but I think it's important for us to continue reminding ourselves of this in the future, because this is who we are dealing with when we are talking about the mainstream media. They have shown their true colors for years and years and years, and they are continuing to be honest today with the BBC telling their journalists, keep fighting for journalism in selectively editing Donald Trump to look like a homicidal maniac. So let's keep doing that, because that's exactly who we are. Related to the last election cycle, I don't know if a lot of you were paying attention to this, but it came out a couple of months after the fact that CBS's 60 Minutes program actually edited an answer of Kamala Harris related to the ongoing crisis in Israel and Gaza to make it seem like she was a whole lot more coherent than she was, rather than the queen of word salad. Here are those two edits side by side, just like this BBC edit that was so manipulative.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
So they literally took a different answer. They literally took a different answer to a different question that sounded better and put it next to that question. Again, for the means to what end? What are they trying to achieve here? Because I thought we were so concerned about preserving democracy. I thought we were so concerned about free and fair elections. I thought we were so concerned about making sure people's vote counted in the United States of America today. But that didn't matter. And that was just one of literally dozens upon dozens upon dozens of examples related to the 2024 election. They did this not just for the election, but for the inauguration. Our friend CJ Pearson threw a huge party for young Gen Z conservatives here in Washington, D.C. around the inauguration time. You may remember this cover of New York Magazine of the Cruel Kids Club, where they selectively cropped out any Black young adult that was in attendance at this party. You can see where they cropped out this photo to make everyone look rich and white. And in the very top of the article, they literally ask the question, have you noticed the entire room is white? This is a pattern of behavior where the mainstream media is very specifically trying to push a singular narrative down your throat. Left equals good, right equals violent, evil, fascist, Hitler-esque, Nazi that needs to be taken down at all costs. And then this same mainstream media continues to repeat the same behavior over and over and over again. And then they wonder why we have a rising temperature for political violence in our society. They wonder how people could possibly have become so radicalized that we see things like we saw 8 weeks ago with the death of Charlie Kirk, or last night with UC Berkeley Antifa members ripping into a Turning Point USA event and being arrested for violent conduct, bloody punches being thrown, and protests at free speech events on college campuses. They are the problem. And they'll continue to tell you that you are the problem. Just as the media does everything they can to cover up actual violence in our society today when it fits their political narrative, we see the exact same thing with the abortion industry, taking the lives violently of 3,000 plus children per day in the United States of America. And this violence has an impact on moms, too. A recent Danish study found something deeply, deeply concerning. Just 1 year after an abortion, women were 50% more likely to need psychiatric treatment in their life, and 87% more likely to experience personality or behavioral disorders. These are not just statistics or numbers on a page. They represent real women facing real struggles. That's why Preborn takes a completely different approach. When a woman walks through their clinic doors uncertain and afraid, she finds something she may not have expected. Genuine support. Certainly not something offered at the Planned Parenthoods of the world. When she gets to see her baby on an ultrasound and meet them for the first time, suddenly what felt like an impossible situation begins to look and feel entirely different. But Preborn doesn't just stop there. When a woman chooses life, they walk alongside of her for up to 2 years, providing practical health like maternity clothes, diapers, ongoing counseling, emotional support, and so much more. It is care for the whole person, addressing her physical needs, her mental health, and her future. As you think about your year-end giving, as we get towards the end of the calendar for 2025, which is crazy, I can't believe that, consider the greatest investment you possibly could ever make, the gift of life. Pick up your phone and dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or visit preborn.com/Isabel. All gifts are tax deductible, and Preborn is a 5-star rated charity. That is preborn.com/Isabel to make a difference for generations to come. Obviously, the mainstream media is contributing to the rising divide politically in our society. But what's really most disturbingly to me, and this is what I want to hone in our episode on today, is that they do this selective editing thing. They do this let's manipulate the facts thing specifically related to violence, especially political violence in the United States of America today. They do this with illegal immigration and the cartels. I can't tell you how many headlines I've seen over the past decade or so. Every time a young college girl like Molly Tibbetts or Laken Riley is murdered near her college campus out for a run or safely walking through her community, and she is violently raped and or murdered by an illegal immigrant, they'll go out of their way to say, yeah, that's bad. But actually, these girls are much more likely to be raped and killed by native-born white American citizens, refusing to cover the actual stories that are going on. And they do this not just at the individual scale, but at the nth degree societal scale as well. Years ago, MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell put out a piece trying to convince you that the American military, that our armed forces are more dangerous to American citizens than illegal immigrants were. Look at this. This is genuinely insane.
The simple fact is this country has suffered more deadly terrorism at the hands of American-born citizens who are veterans of the United States military than people who have crossed into this country at the southern border.
A, that's just not true. Like, let's actually get some fact checks going on that. But B, to say that American citizens are more likely to get attacked by a veteran of our armed services in a, quote, deadly terror attack compared to a violent, actual terrorist illegal immigrant is insane. First and foremost, happy Veterans Day. And to those of you that have served, thank you for your service to our country. That just goes to show you how little respect the mainstream media actually has for those who gave their life, who were willing to lay their life down for our ability to even freely have this conversation. But every single terror attack, rape, murder, drug smuggling operation, bringing illegal firearms into this country, every crime committed by an illegal immigrant was preventable. Every single one of them, which we've seen proven by the Trump administration, by the way, in the last 6 months or so, when quite literally the big magic number of zero illegal immigrants have crossed into our country via the southern border. Fact check me on that. It's true. Every one of those situations was preventable. But they'll gaslight you. They'll make you the bad guy. They'll make you think you're crazy. Because actually, it's not illegal immigrants that are committing these terror attacks. It's not illegal immigrants that are killing beautiful young college girls on their college campuses. It's not illegal immigrants that are raping children by the thousands at the southern border and smuggling children in for human trafficking operations in our country. They're not really a danger to society at all, because really the danger for you, American citizens, are veterans, are members of the military. And then when that gaslighting doesn't work, the same mainstream media will go out of their way to make you sympathize with the evil person, with the criminal, with the terrorist, with the animal that will rape and murder your children, because that's who the real victim is in our society, actually. Let's not forget, related to all of the coverage related to Laken Riley, MSNBC put out the headline that the illegal immigrant killer, murderer of Laken Riley never stood a chance. Look at this headline. Laken Riley's killer, with a sad face. Oh, so sympathetic. Never stood a chance. For all the political controversy surrounding Jose Ibarra, the outcome of this trial was never in doubt. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. And they'll say this about every illegal immigrant, but they will even go out of their way to say this to the face of the President of the United States about literal members of the most deadly, violent gangs on the face of the planet. Remember when ABC News tried to tell Trump that he photoshopped a picture of one of the most violent criminals on the face of the planet who had MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles? They said this to the President of the United States.
Murderers, criminals in this country, we have to get them out, and we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well, wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry. Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS13.
It says MS13.
That was photoshopped. So let me
That
just...
was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry. Hey, but you're not being very nice. He had MS13 tattooed.
Right, we'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine,
No,
sir.
Terry,
I want to get to
Terry.
Ukraine.
No. He had MS, as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're there
in
now.
your picture.
Terry.
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
We'll take a look.
You do such a disservice.
We'll take a look at that,
Why don't you just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
Yeah, that's the question, actually, Mr. President. What are you even saying? Like, what is the goal of saying this? Well, he had tattoos that some people could interpret that maybe he had loose ties to MS-13. It used to be that the media told you what was going on in the world. The news reported on new information, news that was out there going on in the world so that you could be well educated about what was going on in your community, in your country, and in the world. But at some point throughout my lifetime, the news wasn't reporting on what was new. They were inventing the narrative. They were manipulating the facts to give you an alternative version of reality that was supposed to invoke some sort of emotional response in you. Do not mistake me saying this. Do not mishear anything that I am saying right now other than this. There is no such thing as unbiased media anymore. There is no such thing. Every single one of these organizations, time and time and time and time again, have proven themselves, and this matters today, to be a propaganda machine, to tell you that lies are truth, or to selectively edit and change and manipulate and curate things to invoke an emotional response in you. And when you see all of these examples over and over and over again, as they get more and more and more egregious, like telling the president of the United States in the Oval Office, yeah, you're stupid if you misinterpret MS-13 tattooed on someone's knuckles as member of MS-13. That was clearly photoshopped, but even if it wasn't, multiple people might interpret that differently. To the level that we are about to talk about, this new elevated way that the media is responding to violence, literal violence, and apologizing for it, excusing it, normalizing it. The emotional response they are evoking in you has to be rooted in rampant leftist political violence to achieve left-wing authoritarianism by any means necessary. And that's why this matters today. That's what's scary about this new heightened, elevated level of fake news. Because it's something we can all laugh about. We've all laughed about this for like a decade. Haha, you are fake news. Fake news. Not true. Ha 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 at every Trump rally. Yeah, it's not funny anymore, actually. And it's wildly concerning. And it should be spurring all of us into action. That, for example, the literal New York Times put out a headline saying labeling cartels as terrorists, which they are, could actually hurt the U.S. economy, though. Isolating the cartels and labeling them as terrorists could actually really hurt agriculture and tourism in our country. It should be wildly concerning to you that Axios put out a headline about the grisly murder of Irina Zarutska, which we covered extensively here on the show. Yeah, that was maybe sad and hard to watch. It was pretty gruesome, like a horror movie to watch. But according to our headline, the real takeaway you need to have from the death the violent stabbing of a beautiful young Ukrainian refugee living in the United States is that this grisly Charlotte stabbing video is actually fueling MAGA. It fuels MAGA's crime message. It should be wildly concerning to you that when a psychotic, deranged, evil individual who obviously is mentally unstable because they are trans, which again, I'm a big believer this week in saying the hard thing, even when other people aren't wanting to. We talked about that related to so-called Islamophobia. Being trans is a mental illness, and I think we need to talk about that again in society. Obviously, this person is mentally deranged, but when a psychotic, violent, evil, deranged trans person decides to target a Catholic elementary school because of his hatred for God, his hatred for Jesus Christ present in the Eucharist, and his hatred for Christian families in our country, NBC News apologized and corrected the pronouns of the shooter. That was their priority here. NBC News issued a correction after using the wrong pronouns for a mass shooter that shot little children attending Catholic Mass at their Catholic elementary school in the head, because actually she used female pronouns. So we're going to call him a she. That's the priority of the mainstream media. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised. Honestly, maybe none of this should surprise us, because the truth is this escalation into violence and this changing of priorities really finds its peak where we watch the most violent behavior take place entirely. Not to alarm you, but we have less than 2,000 Daily Wire lifetime memberships remaining total. Turns out having an all-access membership with benefits for life, with no renewals ever, is something that pretty much everyone wants. So here are your options. You could still buy one while they are available, or you could win mine. That's right. I have my very own lifetime membership to give away, and I have made it ridiculously easy to enter this once in a lifetime. See what I did there? Giveaway. Download the free Daily Wire Plus app in the App Store, open it, and tap follow under my picture. That's it. You are entered. And who knows? I could be calling you personally to give you my personal lifetime membership. But before any of that happens, you need to download the Daily Wire Plus app and follow me inside it right now to enter to win. I know everything in life kind of feels like it's moving at the speed of light right now, so it's easy for us to forget just how relatively recent all of this was. But do you guys remember how the media treated the President Trump assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania? I will never forget the day that President Trump was shot at this rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was the last day of my husband and I's honeymoon in Italy, and we had an early flight the next morning to come back to the States. We had gone to bed. It was like 11 p.m., I think, roughly, in Italy. And all of a sudden, my phone started blowing up. My sister was FaceTiming me, which isn't that unusual, relatively speaking. But she keeps FaceTiming me over and over and over again. My husband had just fallen asleep, and I was kind of drifting in and out of sleep. But I finally reluctantly answered the phone, and I'm like, is everything okay? And she said, they shot Trump. And I sat right up in bed, and I said, oh my God, what? And we were freaking out. I woke my husband up, and we ended up not sleeping that night. We spent all night looking at the media because this was all brand new information. It was being live streamed at the rally as this was happening the moment my sister had called me. And throughout the next several hours, we watched in turn how the media responded to this. By the next morning, virtually every single publication in the United States refused to even say Donald Trump had been shot, that someone had attempted to assassinate the former president, hopeful next president of the United States of America. Instead, all of the headlines that we saw pretended like none of this even happened. My hometown, just outside of Denver, got the Denver Post the next morning. And you may remember this headline from the Denver Post: gunman dies in attack, on the Sunday Denver Post, with the infamous picture from Butler, Pennsylvania. And the Denver Post wasn't alone. AP News put out this headline: Trump ducked loud noises. This is the stuff that they talked about. Donald Trump was whisked off stage in Pennsylvania after loud noises rang through the crowd, with a photo of him bleeding from his head after he had been shot. Yahoo News put out their own headline that Trump was taken off stage after, what's that term again? Oh, yeah, loud noises. Trump taken off stage at Butler rally after loud noises heard. CNN claimed that Donald Trump wasn't shot. Actually, he just fell down. He fell down. Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. And when he repeatedly was facing assassination attempts throughout the rest of the year, The Atlantic had the audacity to say that Donald Trump was using the attempts on his life to inflame tensions in America. The Atlantic, last September, Donald Trump is using another possible attempt on his life to inflame tensions in America, which is one more reason he should never be president again. But if we thought that was bad, if we thought how the media responded to Donald Trump being shot was bad, let's not even go that far back. Let's remember what just happened like 5 minutes ago with the immediate response to the mainstream media, or from the mainstream media rather, to Charlie Kirk being shot and subsequently assassinated. ABC almost immediately decided they were going to take this time to romanticize Charlie Kirk's assassin instead of the legacy left behind by the voice of a generation. Do you remember this?
We have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality.
What the actual F? Honestly. But it wasn't just ABC. It was MSNBC, whose immediate response to Charlie Kirk being shot was to blame it on a supporter in the crowd, a fan of Turning Point USA, listener of Charlie's radio show, shooting their gun off in celebration that he had come to speak at Utah Valley University.
In which a shooting like this happens.
Yeah, and again, to emphasize what you just emphasized, we don't know any of the full details of this. That we don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea.
We have no idea. This clearly was a right-winger. Those violent, fascist, Nazi Hitler sympathizers. I'm not over it. And maybe I'm still working through the stages of grief. But frankly, the more of this I continue to see from the media, the more angry I am, the more pissed I am that we live in a society that doesn't drag this bullshit out from the darkest shadows of our society into the light and call it what it is, which is violence-inducing propaganda, which is putting a target on your back, which is gaslighting you into thinking you are the bad guy in society, when it is, in fact, these multi-billion-dollar corporations controlled by a very small handful of the same people who are all in bed together to change our society fundamentally, to manipulate truth, to shove propaganda down your throat, to divide our country as far as they possibly can, to achieve power. Ultimately, that is their goal here, to control truth, to get their people elected into office at every level of government, to make sure that they are the ones who are controlling the markets, and to have power over you in your day-to-day life. I'm not over it. And you should not be either. Because the truth is, it's not just Donald Trump getting selectively edited videos from January 6th. It's not just Charlie Kirk being targeted by ABC or MSNBC. It's you. And if this happened to any of you, they would respond the exact same way. I will scream this until the cows come home, until my dying breath. You do not hate the media enough. Every single one of these examples is why we fight so hard day in and day out for free expression and the protection of freedom of speech. I know we talk about that a lot on the show, and we like to talk about it as it pertains to other countries too. Because when we look at stuff that's happening in the EU or the UK or Canada or even here at home in the United States, without freedom of speech, it is so obvious that we lose the opportunity to even seek the truth, to even ask the right questions, to be able to criticize those in power, to know the difference between reality and propaganda. So I hope that Donald Trump sues the pants off of BBC. I really do. I hope he sues every single one of these outlets. I hope Erica Kirk, when the dust settles a little bit here and some of the smoke clears, takes it upon herself and her family to sue ABC and MSNBC and every other outlet that treated her family this way. I hope we start to see a dramatic shift in how Americans consume media. But it starts with this. This is my call to action for you today. You need to start seriously asking yourself and encouraging all of the other people in your life to ask themselves, what media are you consuming? What media are you consuming? Because whether we realize it or not, the media we consume every day does shape our worldview in some way, shape, or form. It has to. Kind of like how they say that you ultimately become the amalgamation of the 5 people that you spend most of your time with. You become who you surround yourself with. We develop subconscious biases by listening to this stuff, by consuming certain media. It does impact our worldview, our values at the individual level, how we speak about what's going on in the world with our families around the dinner table. It impacts our politics, who we vote for. And of course, by extension, it impacts our country. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but your media, whether it's a podcast that you're listening to, tweets that you're interacting with, cable television that you're watching around the family dinner table, or as you're prepping dinner for your kids tonight, the newspapers that get delivered to your front porch every day, whatever it is, your media needs to be a source of truth. And since we're saying the hard thing a lot these days here on the Isabel Brown Show, let me make it a little bit clearer for you. The source of all truth is ultimately God. Who you follow in your life, first and foremost, must be Jesus Christ. It just has to be. That is the ultimate summit pinnacle of what truth is. Truth with a capital T has a name, and that name is Jesus. But from there, who you follow at a lesser level should be people rooted in the truth of God, not people chasing clicks, not people generating manufactured outrage, not multi-billion-dollar corporations trying to apologize for legitimate violence or justifying political control by any means to an end, not those seeking desperate attention by insane woke headlines. But who you should be following are those seeking truth day in and day out. Let's be abundantly clear. Turn off the mainstream media. Please, turn it off. And most importantly, pray for the wisdom of our country to seek the truth in everything we do, because honestly, we have never needed it more than we do right now.